Hi there, I'm Kat Parnell with Birch Bark Editing, along with my partner, Max Frazier, and it is our great pleasure to bring some of these community-oriented events that we host periodically. Tonight, we are really pleased, really pleased to be hosting Jamie Zvirzdin. Sorry, Jamie, don't laugh at me. And Rina Palumbo, and both of them will be reading from their work. But before we dive into that, I just want to let you know that right now we're running a workshop called Kaleidoscope, where writers get together on an online platform and share their work based on some of the prompts that we at Birch Bark craft for them. And it has been a tremendous success. We've had a lovely time with all of these writers, and they have produced some really phenomenal work. Just looking ahead, though, I want to let you know that we also are hosting an event next month with Tara Eisen and David Ryan. For those of you who are Bennington grads, Tara and David are both Bennington graduates who have gone on to do some really marvelous things in publishing. You'll hear more about that at some point. A few details about this evening. If you have questions for either Rina or Jamie, please post it in the chat, address it to all of us, and we will make sure that those questions get to Jamie or Rina when they finish with their reading and their conversation. So without further ado, we have two readers this evening. Our first reader is Jamie Zvirzdin. I did it again, Jamie, I'm sorry, who researches ultra-high energy cosmic rays at the University of Utah and teaches science writing at Johns Hopkins University. She's published work in The Atlantic, Kenyon Review, Brevity, Creative Nonfiction, Consequence, Orion Magazine, and elsewhere. She is the author of Subatomic Writing, 6 Fundamental Lessons to Make Language Matter, and it's published by Johns Hopkins University Press. Our other reader this evening is Rina Palumbo. She has a PhD in early American history from Johns Hopkins. She's working on a novel, Ghost Particles, and 2 nonfiction pieces, Carapace and Grotesques. Her flash fiction has appeared in Ghost Parachute, Milk Candy, and Bending Genres. Her flash nonfiction and creative nonfiction are in or forthcoming in Stone Coast, Identity Theory, and Anti-Heroin Chic. She's the vice president of Third Street Writers, offering workshops and open mics. Those are always fun. She's also editor-in-chief of the forthcoming Third Street Review, a new literary journal seeking the weird, wild, and uncanny. Let's hope that we have a weird, wild, and uncanny evening. Jamie, Rina, take it away.
Thank you so much. I'm beyond delighted to do this. Thank you again, Kat and Max. It's perfectly appropriate because there's a Kat and a Max in Subatomic Writing. It's very happy for me. So I'm going to read just the first couple pages of Subatomic Writing. There are 6 lessons, and they are packaged with a demon. I think that's the easiest way to describe it. The demon has a purpose. We'll just get into it. Okay, so this section is called Unhallowed Origins. Play is a strategy for learning at any age. Mara Krzyzewski, Harvard University, Project Zero. The night the demon came to me, it was my turn to put my 11-year-old Maxwell to bed. Like his 19th century namesake, the physicist James Clerk Maxwell, Max is passionate about science, works extra hard in social circles, and loves playing with language. Where science and language arts overlap is a comfortable place for us, and it's roomier than people think. Max and I were sitting on his bed that chill October night, reading Gary Larson's The Complete Far Side, Volume 3, yes, Volume 3, when Max turned to me. Why do scientists in cartoons always act like morons? He asked. I closed the book, stood, and pulled his Star Wars blanket over him. Our black-brown tabby cat, Tom, jumped onto the bed and curled up on Luke Skywalker's face. To be fair, I said, petting the cat, everyone in cartoons, including cows and chickens, does dumb stuff. It's easy to poke fun at scientists because they're brilliant and busy, but I think people are genuinely frustrated when scientists can't or won't communicate information so people understand the science. Some scientists never learned how. In fact, many of my friends say they never realized they'd be writing so much in their science careers. They often say they wish they'd taken the time to learn how to write better. I scratched Tom under his chin and the purring grew louder. James Clerk Maxwell was brilliant in physics, but he was even more brilliant because he knew how to write about physics in a way that was accessible to others. He wasn't afraid to use analogies and play around with a little fiction to explore ideas, like his thought experiment with the little demon, for example. Maxwell's demon, Max said. Yes, a demon that could reverse chaos. In a letter to his friend Peter Tate, Maxwell imagined that this finite being could separate hot from cold particles inside a divided box. Sorting the particles lessened the chaos in the system, but it also seemed to undermine some universal laws. Then another scientist, William Thomson, Lord Kelvin, loved the idea and called it Maxwell's sorting demon. The name stuck, spread, and helped people visualize and mentally sort all those invisible particles. I bent down and kissed Max on the forehead. You know, Gary Larson actually loves science. He wanted to study bugs as an entomologist, but his cartoons show that the curse of knowledge is a problem for both scientists and society because we don't talk to each other in a way the other can understand. If we did, I suspect we'd have fewer pseudoscience scams, more brilliant breakthroughs, and more public support for science. Max wriggled deeper under the blanket and pulled Tom close to his chest. You could write a book for your students, he said. He brightened. It could be a thought experiment, how we can reverse chaos in the world through better science writing. Maybe, I hedged, thinking of my epic to-do list. Anyway, good night. Love you. Love you too. I walked into the next room and turned on my computer to work on some programs for the Telescope Array Project, an international physics collaboration in Utah. Even though I earned a master's degree in writing and literature, my first love is physics. So by day, I teach science writing to graduate students at Johns Hopkins University. By night, I work on analysis programs or remotely run cosmic ray telescopes. We use these sensitive detectors in the Utah desert to track ultra-high energy cosmic rays, understand them, and figure out where they come from. While Earth's atmosphere and magnetic field shield our planet from the worst of cosmic bombardment, these cosmic rays are actually high-speed subatomic particles, often protons, that zip through the universe and collide with our atmosphere, our Earth, and our DNA, causing small mutations within us. Outside Earth's protective magnetic field, cosmic rays can cause radiation problems for astronauts. We can't boldly go where no Shatner has gone until we figure out how to handle cosmic ray shrapnel. While some physicists detect cosmic rays on satellites and other spacecraft, the Telescope Array Project and its Southern Hemisphere sibling, the Pierre Auger Observatory, tracks cosmic rays from the ground. When a cosmic ray hits our atmosphere, the tiny blast creates a shower of other subatomic particles, including particles of light. The light, called photons, packets of energy, scatters out and hits our detectors, which we run on clear moonless nights. With geometry and data crunching, we see how those photons point back to where the cosmic ray entered and how much energy the original cosmic ray particle had. Where in the sky ultra-high energy cosmic rays come from, how massive they are, and what causes them still needs to be proven with statistical accuracy. I am fortunate to work with marvelously talented people at the University of Utah, colleagues who not only take time to answer my questions, but also make the learning process enjoyable. Although tracking subatomic particles is one of the greatest pursuits and pleasures of my life, sharing what I know through writing is another. Human communication, like particle physics, is complex, chaotic, confusing. I'm grateful my parents and English teachers read to me, listened to me read out loud, and helped me make sense of the hot mess that is the English language. Individual words shift sound, form, and meaning almost at random, jostle against other words, and combine or break down into new entities. Either by themselves or together in phrases, clauses, sentences, and paragraphs, words can be slowed or accelerated, losing or gaining momentum rhythmically or erratically. Other words zip past our comprehension entirely, or at low energies, they rain down on our heads, impacting the surface only and never reaching our brains. A few words, however, burrow deep into us, causing critical changes to our way of thinking, our way of being. If too many words smash into us at energies too high for us to handle, we simply shut down, as some of our telescope array detectors do when a plane flies by on a dusty, smoky night. The words are overbright, too much information, too much noise, not enough substance. Frustrated by unexplained jargon flung at them from atop university towers, many people have likewise shut down, turning to less reliable and more soundbiteable sources for information. That cold October night, while I stared at the twisted syntax of my Python program, it hit me. Particles of language are like particles of matter. Maybe if we visualize language, especially writing, as specific sets of particles colliding and interacting with each other, we could be better science communicators and break the curse of knowledge, reverse communication chaos in a world prone to pseudoscience and error. At the very least, we could organize the chaos so readers are better able to detect and reconstruct our words with more accuracy, ease, and interest. I'm going to skip a little bit. I talk a little bit more about my students and how I have an amazing, diverse set of students at Johns Hopkins. Anyone from, scientists who've had full careers and haven't had a lick of grammar since high school, to full-time editors who come to my class for grammar, punctuation, all the little things of writing. So it's quite the diverse group. There will always be some tiny issue to double check in a style guide of your choice or your editor's choice. But most problems I've seen over the years as a science editor point back to a few missing fundamental lessons regarding the nature of language. Particles of language are like particles of matter. Such a fragmentary approach to writing, using a metaphor from subatomic physics, would be a risky interdisciplinary thought experiment like Maxwell's sorting demon. Speculative rather than definitive. I thought of Michael Faraday's fear in 1852 as he wrote about a new metaphor for magnetism, lines of force, in his book, Experimental Researches in Electricity. I love this quote. He said, "I am now about to leave the strict line of reasoning for a time and enter upon a few speculations regarding the physical character of the lines of force. It is not to be supposed for a moment that speculations of this kind are useless or necessarily hurtful in natural philosophy. They should ever be held as doubtful and liable to error and to change, but they are wonderful aids in the hands of the experimentalist and mathematician. For not only are they useful in rendering the vague idea more clear for the time, giving it something like a definite shape that it may be submitted to experiment and calculation, but they lead on by deduction and correction to the discovery of new phenomena, and so cause an increase and advance of real physical truth, which, unlike the hypothesis that led to it, becomes fundamental knowledge not subject to change. Maybe physics itself could give abstract writing principles a more concrete shape." As I stared out the dark window and listened to the wind howl in the nearby woods, I thought, we need to play with language again, bring back the spirit of speculation. Maybe I could write a book after all. I saved the program, shut down the computer, and went to bed. As my husband slept like the loggiest of logs on the other side of the bed, both Andrew and Max are sound sleepers, a trait I envy, I had finally drifted into dreams when something heavy sat on my chest. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I struggled to open my eyes. A shadow loomed over me, and the blue light from the bedside phone charger dimly illuminated the shadow's wicked features. An electric shock of terror charged through me, and then I remembered. Sleep paralysis, night hag, not again. Schedule another sleep test tomorrow. Night hags are the worst. "Who you callin' hag, bitch?" the shadow hissed. I jerked in surprise and found I could move again. My fight response kicked in, and I kicked that hag right off the bed. Whatever it was fell with a satisfying thud onto the carpet. I heard an oof, then a groan. The shadow picked itself up. I'm not a blinkety blank succubus, woman. I'm a demon, your demon, in fact, and you just summoned me." "What?" I whispered. "I did not." "Come on, bring back the spirit of speculation. Methinks thou didst, dumbass. Shall we go downstairs to talk?" Great, I thought. Maxwell's mother's demon. So that's the intro to this thought experiment in which a little demon forces me to write a book comparing the particles of matter to particles of language, and ends up kidnapping my cat. So you have to read the book and you have to read the lessons to find out if I get my cat back.
That was so wonderful.
Thank you. It was really fun to write.
Of course, it's a tough act to follow, but I write both fiction and nonfiction, so I'll read a couple of selections from both of those. First thing I'd like to share with you is originally published in the Stone Coast Review, and it's called Old Things. I see myself walking on hard packed snow from the fields and towards the river. It is overcast and just before sunset, only shades of gray above and white below. I see myself walking in a black coat with the hood on and holding something in my hands. This feels like embellishment of a memory because I know that place, those fields and that river. I know that as you walk towards the rocky shoreline, you have to cross an asphalt highway and walk through a small graveyard. It is fenced around now, but not then, with a zinc plaque added at some point when it was decided that it was the right thing to do. I don't know the words, names, dates, or the history of how this tiny, now sacred place came to be, but I know that Aboriginal people lived here. Some of their bodies now lie here, and we know some things about them, but not everything. When I was very young, the older man who lived next door would take long walks over his fields, and I would sometimes join him. He used to tell me stories. Once he described how abjectly poor the Wyandot were, selling whatever they could to get money for food. I remember asking why they didn't grow things, and he told me they didn't know how. This seemed strange, looking at the lush rows of corn and soybeans that seemed to erupt with ease. Why didn't they hunt? I asked, thinking about the pheasants and the deer that the shotguns brought down every autumn. Or fish, I would ask. That is easy to do. Now, I know there was a long, complex, yet simple story he could have told me then, but instead he told me a lie. He told me they had forgotten how to do things like farm and hunt and fish. On top of his lie, he told me a truth. At the end, the only things that were left were the small wooden shacks they lived in and the clothes they wore, and only the old people stayed behind until all the people were gone. But what could they sell then if they had nothing, I asked. Old things was what he had said. In the irrigation ditches that surrounded the fields, you could dig into the fine silty earth and find the bleached bones of small animals, usually rabbits and birds, pieces of smoothed edge pottery, ochre and sienna, glass shards, brown, green, and the palest blue, metal, which I thought was silver, but was probably nickel or tin, and stone pieces that felt like they had been part of something else. I thought these were old things, so I kept them in a box. When I was old, when I was old, I thought I could sell them too, like the people in the stories. I walk in that gray and silent moment, carrying something towards the river, but it's getting darker, and the cold now feels as heavy as the box I am holding. I look down at it, and it looks bigger or smaller and not the same as I remember. I wonder if I should stop in the graveyard, but I don't. I step through the blanched white fingers of polished stone, words eroded into hints of letters, and step onto the rocky beach. The current keeps the river from freezing over. The shards of ice break off and pile up again as they move silently downstream to the ocean. The movement is hypnotic, with slow accumulation and quick escape. I have stopped walking. I have dropped the box, but maybe I was never holding it because only cold remains. The second piece of nonfiction I'd like to share with you is from Faux More magazine. It's called Breakfast Over the Atlantic. The tray table is too high for me. My legs dangle, and the seatbelt I had so proudly closed with that clang snap sound is so tight around my waist that my hands barely reach the miracles from above. One half of a grapefruit, yellow segments and bright yellow dimpled rind bowl, pale petals of pulp in translucent white pith holders radiating out from a bright red maraschino cherry, stem curling in surprise. Scrambled eggs, a yellow scoop convex with a green sprig of parsley in a comma, pausing. A white plastic cup with black tea, a white plastic cup with cola, plastic cutlery on a white paper napkin, a packet of salt, a packet of pepper, and 4 packets of white sugar. The woman sitting next to me with the window seat tears open a sugar and pours it into her coffee. She does the same thing with her grapefruit and then starts to eat her eggs, chews them, stops, and then adds salt and pepper. The plastic knife and fork in her hands seem to know what to do. I put 1 sugar on my grapefruit, 1 on my eggs, 1 in my tea, and 1 in my cola. I put all the salt and all the pepper on the eggs. I pick up my fork and start to eat my eggs, speckled now, salty, sweet, and peppery in my mouth. The woman is frowning at me and says something, but I don't understand English, so I start to cry, softly, just tears. As I cry, I force myself to eat and drink everything in front of me, the bright taste of sugar, sharp strings of pepper, and the overwhelming flavor of salt. The grapefruit coated with sugar sinking into the flesh, so hard to eat with a knife and fork, but so very, very sweet, that bright taste like the hard daylight from the window. I finish with the cherry, leaving the stem, more a question now. Tea now, so sweet if cooling, so easy to swallow that taste, that pure sweetness. Cola, even sweeter, so I finish it before I finish the eggs that are so, so salty. They cut my mouth, but I spear them and swallow without taste, and then I finish the tea. I leave the parsley next to the cherry stem, closing the quote. Everything is empty now, but I'm still crying. I want the sweetness to win over the salt. Salt on my face, though. I keep tasting too much salt. There wasn't enough sugar. And then I'd like to share 2 pieces of fiction. And the first one is called How to Build a Rocket, which was published in Bending Genres. Rocket science is still rocket science, so make sure you know the specifics of the rocket you want to build. This has gotten easier because there is just so much more information out there. Not so much online, but libraries are free and open anytime, anywhere. You can take out stacks of books and specialized peer-reviewed journals and read and take notes and take more notes until you have A, design specs, and B, a materials list. 2, tools may be a problem, but like always, improvise. You may have something that can cut and weld and combine and discombobulate. So look around in the places that may have tools. Best if you can walk or hike there. But if you've hoarded enough gasoline to take longer excursions and there's something specific you need, go there and take it. 3, raw materials for your rocket may be easier to procure than tools to build it because there's just so much stuff around. Do you know how much you can scavenge and scrounge? Of course you do, because you've been doing it for years by digging through piles of rubbish. Get creative. Gathering everything you need on your materials list may take time, but solid effort and grit will get you there. Rockets are big, but you have lots of space. Just make sure your work area is clean and clear. Start building your rocket from the inside out. All the electronics, life support, inertial guidance systems, propulsion and steering, and the other myriad details that you have on your design specs need to be constructed and put together and then combined with all the other different parts of the design so that the whole thing works together to launch you into orbit. This will take time, so be patient. Fuel. This one is tricky. Older rockets use solid boosters, but that stuff isn't around anymore. Hence, you need to find the perfect blend of liquid fuel, which will be the most dangerous part of this and requires lots of testing. But you have time for experiments, so keep trying different combinations until you find one that will give you the lift you need. Shell. You need 3 layers. The outer one will burn off. The middle will deflect solar radiation and protect you from micrometeorites, and the inner skin keeps you inside. Again, work from the inside out. This means that the outer hull will most likely not be aesthetically pleasing, but anyone watching you will only see it burning away and shards of it falling back to Earth. Suit up. Okay, so you took this from the Smithsonian, but it's not like Neil Armstrong will ever use it again, so what's the harm? Take only what you need, blast off. The only view is in front. There was never anything behind you anyway. And the last thing I'll read from is was published in Ghost Parachute, and it's called 1/2 of Newton's First Law. Which I'm trying to find here in my notes. Oh, I guess we could stop there. Actually, I can't find that particular document right now. So I'm sorry about that. So we'll read that one later if we have time.
I have the link if you need it.
Ah, here it is. I found it.
It's my favorite.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. It was, you know, with paper, sometimes papers get mixed up with other paper and it wasn't, so I'm sorry, but I apologize for that. But this is one half of Newton's first law. A body in motion stays in motion, the recital. You came late and had to stand at the back of the gymnasium of your daughter's school. You missed her solo. You missed how she leaped and twirled with the other girls, arms perfect, bodies encased in pink leotards, and those oh so lovely faces enhaloed in tight hair buns that gleamed under hot stage lights. A body in motion stays in motion, the ice cream parlor. You flittered from table to table, brought extra cones and cups, and cajoled the server for more sprinkles, whipped cream, and cups of ice water. All the girls' parents and siblings looked at you with smiles and appreciation for ensuring everyone had everything they needed. A body in motion stays in motion, the car. You went fast, like you always did, windows open, music blaring big band tunes that you loved since your irony-fueled college days of being a hipster doofus. A body in motion stays in motion, home. As soon as you dropped your keys into that hand-turned pottery bowl your best friend picked up from a co-op in Taos, you got lost in your phone, migrated to your laptop, and finally to the monstrous television that streamed and streamed entertainment of all and any sort you could want, anytime, any day. A body in motion stays in motion, home. When I came downstairs from bath time and stories and a glass of warm milk, you were standing in the hall holding your keys in your hand, turning the fob around and around, looking down at your feet. I need to go out for a bit, meet John. You know, he's going through a rough time. Yeah, sure, but he's my best friend. Okay, so I need to be there for him. It won't be long and I'll get some milk for the morning. Notice we were out. A body in motion stays in motion, home. You walk out and shut the door behind you. The sound of the closing door, sharp, abrupt. It rattles the empty pottery bowl, sending it spiraling on its lip bottom edge faster and faster and faster until it lands down hard and stops.
Awesome. I'm so happy that you read that one, Rina. That's my favorite. And a lot of what I talk about in the Subatomic Writing book is sort of encapsulated in Rina's work. So she uses vibrant words and sensory language. Like in the Atlantic piece that she just read, there were lists of vibrant things, the grapefruit, right? And the salt and like the spoon, you can see it, taste it, hear it, sense it in some way. And a lot of what I tell my students is we're missing some of that sensory language. And it doesn't, if you're describing, you know, some bacterium of this or that or whatever, it's not appropriate necessarily to talk about grapefruit and that sort of thing. But if you are in certain situations describing something and you need to use a metaphor, by all means, use a metaphor that people can understand. During my Bennington lecture, I mentioned a guy from the 1800s, Spratt was his name, and he hated metaphors, and he thought that these enlightened, you know, proto-scientists should not use metaphors. And that sort of started science writing down a boring track. But like, as James Clerk Maxwell used, like he used a little demon to make things vibrant again. And I think this vibrancy deserves to come back into our language in science communication, in any kind of writing, right? Whether it be fiction, nonfiction, poetry, we're going for that vibrancy of language. So that's just lesson one in the book, but that's one example from what Rina just read. The other thing I like that she does in her many awesome short form work, she's done so well, you guys, at just pumping out these amazing pieces. If you go to her Twitter account, she's posted links as they've come out. And so I had like a browser with all the tabs open, and I unfortunately, like, Chrome quit on me or something, so I lost it. But if you want, I'll just post it. here, let's see. How do I?
You're kind of embarrassing me, so I appreciate it, but it's kind of hard to listen to, actually. So I've had a lot. I had some success last year. Let's just put it that way. So.
Oh yeah. So we wanted to talk about that later. But Rina, you should know that I'm super, super impressed with this output, and we wanted to. Rina and I talked before this, and we talked straight for 40 minutes. We're like best friends now. So, but we wanted to structure this conversation first talking about writing, and then editing, and then publishing, sort of the natural evolution of a piece of writing, because we've had experience in those three things, and we're happy to pass on what tips we can. But yeah, so if you go, you can see a lot of these like brilliant bursts that she's done. And I'm just super impressed with how she's done them. So go, Rina. I just love what you're doing. So thank you for sharing all of that.
I appreciate all the good stuff you're saying. I was impressed, though, the piece that you wrote about, I want to get the title right. Is it 6 ways to calculate a universe in flux?
Yeah.
Because that, the same way how to build a rocket, it's a list form. And I think a list is a very powerful and useful way to structure a story. Could you share that with us? It's just such a great piece of writing. Do you have it available that you can?
I do.
And then maybe we can talk about how using the list form as a way to navigate narrative in space. So
perfect. So I also ask my subatomic writing students every semester to write this short form. And anyone who reads the book, there's a challenge at the beginning that says, hey, write a 700-word short form thing, the kind of writing that Rina and I like to do. So this piece, 6 Ways to Calculate a Universe in Flux, was published in Orion several years ago. I don't remember when. Okay, yeah, and there's just 6 parts, like Rina did 6 parts. I love this structure. 1, arithmetic. Children learn early to call chaos to order, to safety pin themselves to the cloth of the cosmos. I watch my 2-year-old son, Max, develop this survival skill in curious ways. On the airplane leaving the Marshall Islands, he is enthralled by a calculator, his comfort toy as we move to our next diplomatic assignment. He's pressing enter over and over, but he's quiet and I can sleep. In an empty apartment in Montreal, my husband and I listen in shock as our son cheerfully recites the powers of 2 up to 2 to the 27th, from 2, 4, 8, 16, up to 134,217,728. The same quiet power of 2 assembles the 2 to the 44th cells of newborns. Max cries when his calculator breaks. 2, area. Incrementing by 1 on his new calculator, 3-year-old Max lists 204 countries in alphabetical order, from Afghanistan to Zimbabwe. Countries superimposed on continents are unnatural, shifty, violent. They erupt like volcanoes at the borders. Max's preschool teacher pulls me aside and suggests we test Max for autism. In Canada, the 2nd largest country in the world geographically, the 33rd country on Max's list, we make space for early intervention. 3, composition. I marvel that 99% of my 4-year-old is made from oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, calcium, and phosphorus, elements forged in the wombs of stars. On the plane to Nicaragua, our 3rd assignment, my star child recites the 118 elements of the periodic table, both the stable and the unstable, like a devoted string of Hail Marys. 4, light. There are 88 Western constellations, 89 if you count both the head and tail of the snake as it coils around the thighs of Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer. I bring my son to work where he helps my university students study for their constellation quiz. In Latin, he names all the welkin walking animals like an astrophysical atom: crab, lion, peacock, scorpion. He invokes scientific instruments, parts of ships, gods, monsters. 5, sound. Max, now 7, learns the names of 728 North American birds from the book Bird Songs Bible. The accompanying audio player provides the delicate chainsaw of the Atlantic puffin, the sweet taboo buzzard tones of the red-breasted nuthatch. It's a horrible bird. I really hate that bird. Despite my headache, I understand that sound identified is comforting, given the cacophony of our lives. We will soon learn the difference between fireworks and gunshots, and I will wish for the birds again.
Wow. It's a brilliant, brilliant
Sorry,
story.
there's one more. 6, distance. Weeks before Nicaragua rends itself in violence, Max and I recreate the solar system. The sun is a grapefruit I place on the sidewalk in our Managua neighborhood, and I hold Max's hand as we walk 1,000 meters down the dusty street past Pluto to Eris, our sweat dripping across space-time. When we return, someone's taken our grapefruit and Max cries. I tell him we must share the sun with everyone. On the plane as we evacuate, calculator in hand, Max whispers planetary distances to himself and smiles. Though airborne, he's grounded in the firmament that formed him, and side by side we'll count the universe until all calculators break.
Amazing, amazing writing. You're able to do so much with six discrete paragraphs. I think that's why it's so useful to have lists as a form, because you can tell more than one story, right? What I love about your story is there's elements of poetry to it. You use compression, telegraphing, the clipped lines. It's a very almost a poetic structure for an essay. It's just absolutely amazing. And in that way, you tell us a story in depth that I don't know if we could have gotten to if you just simply described everything. Right? Yeah. It's just having that spaces between the paragraphs in the form of a list gives so much depth to the story you're trying to tell. It's just a great piece of writing. So
the white space, I think the white space in specifically this list structure is really powerful, because you can also say things in the white space. And then you can also do so much with sound. When I specifically wrote this piece using what's called phonosemantics, and this is a very gray area of linguistics, but I have my students, and thanks to some of my students for coming tonight, I have them organize words according to their associations, and it turns out that there are these clusters of meaning in writing that, for example, GL in English has the implicit meaning of reflected light.
Oh, wow.
And so think about gleam, gloam, glitter, glisten. It's not all GL words like glue, but there's a sound cluster there. And if you go far enough back to Indo-European, times, you'll see that I think it's some sort of GL form that means light. And so there are these tiny sounds that mean stuff that you can add to your writing in this very compact subatomic way that I get really excited about. So this particular piece I wrote with the K sound, specifically a C. So you'll see lots of C words in the Orion piece, calculator and chaos and cacophony and that sort of thing. Because C is hard, but C is also soft. And that is kind of the feeling that I wanted this piece to have. So yeah, I do think that we can bring a lot of added meaning to make language matter, right? By using poetry, by infusing poetry into prose. You don't have to have a regular rhythm because it's prose. But I'm even asking my science writing students to learn a bit of poetry. So that's lesson 5. And props to my dad who came tonight. He's read up until lesson 5. So go, Dad.
Since you've been talking about lessons from the book, like what can you just, for those of us who haven't had a chance to read it yet, what the 6 like what the lessons are, or just kind of a
Yeah.
brief overview?
Your
of it?
mother is here too, Jamie.
Thanks, Ma.
There you go. I'm there with you.
Thanks. My parents are great. So let's see. The first lesson is, it goes from word to paragraph. So that's all we're doing. That's all we're focusing on. It's even smaller than the structure, the overall structure of a piece. So lesson 1 is about sound and sense. That's the phonosemantic stuff. So that's the word level. Lesson 2 is the phrase level. So we review the word classes that not many of us appreciated learning in high school. I actually loved it. And it turns out that most grammar and punctuation problems that I've edited as a longtime science editor, most problems stem from people not understanding phrases and how phrases work in and can move around in the English language. So in class, we talk about different kinds of phrases and learn to be really flexible in reorganizing a sentence. The third lesson is grammar and syntax. So how there are valency patterns, and they're called valency patterns. It sounds like a science term, but this is writing, this is English. So we talk about the different valency patterns, and how to have sentences that don't all sound the same. This is another problem in writing. Like if you have a subject, verb, direct object, and then you write another subject, verb, direct object, that begins to sound very boring after a while. So if you learn to change your valency pattern in a paragraph, you'll have a better sounding paragraph. Lesson 4 is, so that was the clause level, and then we add punctuation for the sentence level, and punctuation is nothing more than sound with breath. And so I tell my students, if you read your sentence and you run out of breath, you need to rewrite your sentence. This is especially true in science writing because scientists and science writers can write a little too much, and they can do better with that. We can all do better with that, honestly. And then lesson 5 is what I call the super sentence level. And that's where poetry comes in with repetition and variation. You do a great job with repetition and variation. So Rina, one of your pieces that I love is Airborne, that was published in Anti-Heroin Chic. Thank you.
It's a weird title, but yeah.
It's fun. And so you repeated the phrase, he's a heavy social drinker, at the beginning of each of the paragraphs. And you also do a good job repeating in the pieces that you read to us tonight, right? You've got some phrases that take on deeper and deeper meaning as you repeat them. And they can have a certain cadence and rhythm to it. So I teach poetic scansion in my science writing classes. We talk about iambic pentameter, and I have them write science sonnets like Max and Kat were so nice to publish last week in Microlit Almanac. I love their science sonnets. They're so fun to read, and you learn like little bits of science, but it's not overwhelming, but it's memorable and beautiful. So that's lesson 5. And then finally, lesson 6 is the paragraph level, where you learn pacing and coherence. This is probably the hardest thing. It's where you connect your sentences together so that your reader can follow you, like a dot to dot game from sentence to sentence within a paragraph, so that you have a set package, as it were, where the reader's like, oh, okay, this paragraph is accomplishing this. And you can do really cool things with paragraphs that amplify the power of the emotion, especially at the end of those paragraphs, right? So those are the 6 lessons. And I'm so happy that we are able to man alive, how did the time go so fast, Kat?
It went really quickly. And this has been a fascinating conversation. And I'm really glad that we heard as much of your work as we did. Rina's and Jamie's work is really exceptional. And thank you for sharing it with us. We do close our events right at 8 o'clock, but we have a question and this is a question I think for both of you that appeared in the chat, and it's from a Bennington person, Jean Hay, and she said, last time I saw Jamie, she was writing fiction. Jamie, are you combining fiction and science in any way? And that goes for both of you. So we'll give you a few minutes each to just cover this question, which is a fabulous one.
It is, and I've really enjoyed talking with Rina and reading her work, because we both have a great time doing fiction, nonfiction, like sprinkling in poetry in both of those things, and then adding science on top of that. So yes, I graduated in fiction from Bennington, but then I published nothing but nonfiction since Bennington. And this like demonic incursion in this otherwise nonfiction book is the only other fiction I've done that I've published. Isn't that weird? So how it goes.
I don't have a really thought out answer. I can't remember who it was that said that all writing is autobiographical on some level. And so for me, I guess I just tell the story I want to tell, and if it happens to be with all made up stuff or with things from real life, I just try to navigate it that way. So interesting question though. Yeah.
I love it. It's really fun.
Yeah.
It is an interesting question. And, Rina, your point about autobiographical fiction, or as they call it nowadays, autofiction. I mean, the reality is there are people who have like beautiful imaginations and can go wild places. But many people rely on something that occurred in their life as a springboard, and that opens the gates to some form of publication. And before we close out tonight, I know we said we would, take a few minutes to talk about the publishing world. And Jamie knows my history, and Rina probably not. But before we do, Jamie, I'm going to horribly embarrass you horribly and say, this is a question or a comment that came in from David Steck. I noticed Jamie likes to make up words. You said soundbiteable earlier in the book. You described inverted clauses as Yodaizing, which we all understand perfectly. Now here, this is the lead-in to the publishing question. In publishing, there has to be a wall that you break down between what you do and what's on the page and your audience. And so you do have to Yodaize it. You have to make sure that it is soundbiteable for your readers. Talk to me about publishing in sound bites, bowls.
Wow.
Now, you go ahead, because Rina, you've got a literary magazine.
Yes. Why? It seemed like a good idea at the time, but publishing is hard. I don't know any way around saying that. So how do you make it sound? But I think you have to. God, this sounds so capitalistic, but you have to know your audience and you have to know the market. I think you have to do research to see where your work will fit. It's a lot of work. You have to do a lot of reading, but there is so much amazing writing out there in literary journals. It's incredible. Like every week I discover somebody who's just brilliant and cool, and I follow all their social media and I read more stuff by them. I think ultimately it's about being a good literary citizen, to be part of this world and engaged in any way that you can. But I don't know about the soundbiteable stuff. That sounds like marketing to me. I'm not sure how you do that, but maybe Jamie has a better answer.
For me, it goes back to what we were saying earlier about making language meaningful, making it matter. Like when you have a more condensed product to give that has just a little bit more added meaning behind the scenes, the sensory that we talked about, I feel like readers can pick up on that pretty quickly, and they know that like generated marketing garbage is one thing, but if you come across a piece of writing that really speaks to you through the imagery and the senses and the sounds, and how you've carefully crafted, from word to the paragraph, it will end up being sound biteable. So yeah, I think there's sensationalism, and that definitely happens, but I think we can combat that, especially in science writing, where we have a lot of pseudoscience to counter, with vibrant writing. And Rina, I will say this, like, Rina has done a great job knowing her audience much better than I have in learning what publications accept micro fiction or micro nonfiction. People have different words for it. Micro and flash, and Brevity Magazine is something we both love also.
Love, yeah. I mean, there's so many definitions, even if you go into Duotrope, between, 500 words or 400 words. I mean, it's not, I don't know if we have an industry standard yet about what actual a micro means, even among ourselves. So
yeah,
you have to do the research. You have to just read a lot, so that's all I have.
Yeah, no, this is all wonderful. And, to get to the idea of flash, is there are conventional definitions. The one that is I see most often is 1,500 words.
Yeah.
But you will see, as Rina wisely noted, you'll see magazines that take, 50 words, 100 words, 250, 500. It's like it is a numbers game with language. But Jamie is spot on when she says that language must be vibrant, and that vibrancy conveys all the sensory detail that you could possibly want to convey, as long as you know how to tap into language and the atomic particles of language. It's so important to understand that. And it even gets down to grammar and sentence structure and, formats and lists and everything. One last quick question for each of you. What is your biggest no-no in writing? Things you never want to see someone put on the page?
Oh, I got mine. Oh, I know mine. This is actually something that's really been bothering me. I'm doing applied physics. I'm finally getting my physics degree that I wanted for a long time. And all of the textbooks have clearly and obviously every other sentence. And these are textbooks that are trying to convey information. They're trying to communicate, right? But when you say obviously, you are shutting out a reader who may not quite get what you're saying. But as soon as you say clearly or simply or obviously, you are putting up a wall if they don't understand. And it's called proof by intimidation, right? A lot of scientists do it, and I am on a mission to get them to stop.
You go, Jamie. I hear you and I get it. Rina, how about you?
It's a tough question. I would have to say pretension, when something doesn't read as authentic. And it's not something I can pinpoint. It's just a feeling you get when you're reading prose. And there's just something, it's not even one of those cool uncooked bits that, that kind of make something sparkle and jump. It's just something, a lack, it's a lacuna of emptiness there. And it's that sense of just, it's not authentic, it's not real, it's not coming from a place of genuine selfhood or humanity or something. And that's a vague answer, but it's the best I have. So
no, it's great. It's a perfect answer. And I appreciate that. And I agree with both of you. We've both raised some really important issues here. You've given us some advice. I would only add one other thing: modifiers, the overuse of modifiers. I just want to draw. No, please no. So On that, I will not overuse any more modifiers, but I will say thank you so much for being with Birch Bark this evening.
Yay!
You guys were phenomenal, and thank you everyone for coming this evening. It was wonderful. Please support writers by purchasing their books, buy Jamie's book, and support literary magazines. Anytime you see a literary magazine that is looking for donations, go for it, donate. Thank you so much, and good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.